Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a literal David versus Goliath tale that seriously feels like it belongs in a massive Hollywood blockbuster. But the crazy thing, it's entirely real. We're looking at the saga of a young sultan who actually stood his ground, pushed back the seemingly unstoppable Mongol horde, and etched his name right into history. They called him the Lion of Khwarazm. Let's dive into this incredible story.
So, who was the man who actually made Genghis Khan pause? Well, to answer that, we've got to jump right into the action. Picture this scene. It's November 24th, 1221. We're standing at the precipitous edge of the roaring Indus River. A young warrior is completely trapped, cornered by the most terrifying conqueror the world had ever seen, Genghis Khan himself. So what does he do?
Staring down absolutely certain defeat, this guy, fully armored by the way, spurs his horse and just leaps off a high cliff straight into the turbulent, raging waters of the Indus River. Genghis Khan was absolutely stunned. He ordered his archers to hold their fire, turned to his own men, and literally said, "If only my own sons were like him." I mean, earning that kind of praise from Genghis Khan is almost unfathomable, right? So who exactly was this man? All right, Section 1, Rise of the Underdog.
You know, Jalaluddin Mangburni wasn't really supposed to be the hero of this story. But, man, his life went from 0 to 60 incredibly fast. Born in 1199 in Gurgenjiz, the capital of the Khwarazm Empire, his dad quickly recognized his military skills. By 1215, he's given the southwestern territories to govern. But notice the insane acceleration here. In 1220, he ascends to a throne that is essentially already collapsing. And just 1 year later, in 1221, he actually pulls off a massive victory at the Battle of Parwan. It is a sudden, violently fast thrust into leadership.
So why was he such an underdog? Well, despite being a total prodigy on the battlefield, Jalaluddin just wasn't the favorite. His younger brother, Uzlug Shah, had the backing of their powerful grandmother, Turkin Khatun, a Kipchak princess. Jalaluddin, on the other hand, was the son of Aychichek, a Turkish concubine. Because of his mother's lower status, the internal family politics really worked against him. He was basically an outsider in his own royal court.
And then, absolute disaster strikes. Between 1219 and 1220, Genghis Khan launches this devastating, sweeping invasion of Khwarazm. This whole thing was sparked by the massacre of Mongol merchants in the city of Otrar. Now, Jalaluddin fought incredibly bravely alongside his father, Al-Din Muhammad II, but it wasn't enough. The empire was utterly destroyed. The collapse was so absolute that Jalaluddin's father was forced to flee for his life, eventually dying in total poverty on a remote island in the Caspian Sea.
Moving on to Section 2, Pushing Back the Horde.
So, right after taking the throne in 1220, a conspiracy forces Jalaluddin to flee his own capital with just a few hundred horsemen. He makes this desperate, harrowing flight across the brutal Karakum Desert, even managing to defeat a Mongol detachment along the way. But then, 50,000. That's the sheer scale of the army he miraculously managed to put together after finally reaching Ghazni. From a few hundred guys fleeing across a desert to raising 50 to 60,000 soldiers, it's just a stunning display of sheer willpower and leadership.
And he doesn't just sit on this new army, he puts it right to work. In 1221, at the Battle of Parwan, Jalaluddin did the impossible. He delivered a crushing defeat to the Mongol general Shigi Kutakuk. Now, this wasn't just some minor skirmish, okay? This was Jalaluddin's first major victory against the Mongols. He proved to the entire world that Genghis Khan's forces were not invincible. He literally proved that the Mongols could bleed. But, as is so often the case, right after their biggest win, tragedy strikes. A devastating mistake happens. His commanders get into this really petty dispute over how to divide up the war spoils. It spirals completely out of control, and half of his newly formed army deserts him immediately. His momentum just collapses overnight, leaving him dangerously, terribly exposed.
Which brings us to Section 3, the legendary escape.
Now, as you might guess, Genghis Khan wasn't exactly the type to let a massive defeat like Parwan slide. Furious, he decides to personally hunt Jalaluddin down. Let's break down exactly how this legendary moment unfolded. Step 1. Jalaluddin and his remaining guys are completely pinned against the banks of the Indus River. Step 2. A fierce battle rages, but with half his army gone, certain defeat looms over them. Step 3. Rather than surrender, Jalaluddin, completely fully armored, mounts his horse and makes that spectacular leap from the high cliff right into the roaring river. And Step 4.
the stunning conclusion, where a genuinely shocked Genghis Khan actually orders his archers to hold their fire, letting the brave Sultan cross.
Now, as heroic as that escape was, the cost? Just unimaginable. While Jalaluddin successfully crossed to the other side, he had to leave almost everything behind. Most of his army was slaughtered on those riverbanks. Even more devastating, his family and his children were captured and killed. The personal and strategic losses he suffered in that single moment were just absolute.
Let's look at Section 4, Exile and Final Battles.
So, how do you even begin to bounce back from losing literally everything? Well, upon reaching India, Jalaluddin actually sought shelter from the Delhi Sultanate under Sultan Iltutmish, but he was flat out refused. So he establishes a small kingdom in the Punjab. But he didn't just survive there. In 1224, his brother invited him back to Iran, and he launched into this relentless multi-front war. I mean, look at this. He wasn't just fighting the Mongols. He's fighting the Seljuks, the Ayyubids, internal rebels, all while conquering territories like Tabriz, Tbilisi in Georgia, and regions in the Punjab. It's a dizzying, non-stop display of continuous warfare.
But you know, fighting non-stop eventually takes a massive toll. In 1230, the relentless pressure finally broke his momentum. He was defeated at the Battle of Yassachemen by the Seljuk Sultan Kaikubad. Jalaluddin possessed unbelievable tactical brilliance, absolutely, but he fundamentally struggled to maintain the political unity he needed to sustain an empire across so many diverse fronts and against so many different enemies.
31. Wrap your head around that for a second. Jalaluddin was only 31, maybe 32 years old when his life came to an end. After surviving Genghis Khan, crossing brutal deserts, jumping off cliffs in full armor, he was treacherously killed on August 15, 1231, in the Diyarbakir region by a Kurdish peasant or local enemy. A really quiet, sudden end for a life lived almost entirely roaring on the battlefield.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Legacy of the Lion.
So even though he ultimately lost his empire, Jalaluddin's impact on history is just huge. He was one of the very first rulers who actively tried to unite the Muslim world against the Mongol threat. The Lion of Khwarazm's legend lived on way beyond his scattered armies. Actually, his surviving Khwarazmian soldiers went on to become these famous, highly sought-after mercenaries all across the Middle East. And today, centuries later, he's still revered as a national hero in Uzbekistan, Turkey, and across Central Asia. It's a real testament to how one warrior's story can literally inspire generations for centuries.
So, what's the big takeaway for us in this explainer? Look, on the one hand, you have Jalaluddin's unmatched bravery and military skill. It's undeniable. But on the other hand, he struggled deeply with political unity and wisdom. The core lesson here? Bravery alone just isn't enough. To truly endure, to build something that actually lasts, unmatched battlefield bravery ultimately requires the political wisdom to keep your allies together.
Which leaves me with a question for you to chew on as we wrap things up today. What do you think was Jalaluddin's greatest act of bravery? Was it that famous, crazy leap into the Indus River? Was it raising a massive army from nothing in the middle of a desert? Or was it simply his stubborn refusal to ever give up against entirely insurmountable odds? Think about it, and keep exploring this incredible slice of history. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.